Next on One on One.
Why not just go along with what you believed your whole life?
That's the hard part, breaking free from that comfort zone. When you're so ingrained in your tradition and what you grew up knowing, just breaking free from that, it hurts. But if you want to follow God, you have to take that step.
Hello and welcome to One on One. I am Brother Barry Thompson. This is a show where you meet everyday people from all over the world who have spent their lives walking in one or many directions, only to discover that they needed to find the right path to God. See what these people found in the Church of Christ or Iglesia Ni Cristo that they couldn't find anywhere else. Well, today we're going one-on-one with Brother Jason Ladrillono, a young man who had been taught to be religious at a very young age, but later realized that what he was taught as a young boy were actually against the teachings of God.
Jason Ladrillono from San Diego, California, is a young man with a whole life ahead of him. He grew up with a great childhood and was introduced to religion very early on.
I was raised by two great and loving parents, and they brought me up in the Catholic faith, together with both my brother and my sister. And they instilled in us a reverent fear and respect for God. We attended church every single Sunday.
As Jason grew, so did his faith in the Catholic beliefs he was raised on. But because of a friend's invitation, he began to doubt.
I was introduced to the Church of Christ by a good friend of mine, Sister Eileen. And one day we were talking about religion one day, and she brought into question certain Catholic doctrines that actually went against certain teachings in the Bible, such as forbidding to marry, or the worship of graven images or statues, or repetitive or repetitious prayers like the Rosary. And that came as a shock to me because I never really questioned my religion at the time. I never really thought about going against tradition because it's what I grew up knowing. And so of course it shocked me, but at the same time it made me more interested in wanting to learn more, because I mean, what if it was true? What if my family and I were not worshiping God according to the teachings of the Bible?
Well, here with us in the studio is Brother Jason Ladrillono. Brother Jason, welcome. How are you?
Good to be here, thank you.
Well, Brother Jason, like most people today, they're comfortable with where they are, especially when it comes to religion. They're not really searching for anything. Now, how old were you when you were first introduced to the Church of Christ or the Iglesia Ni Cristo?
I was actually 17 years old at the time, back in high school.
That's a pretty young age.
Yeah.
Now, were you a person who read the Bible? Had you read the Bible up until that point in your life?
I didn't necessarily read the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Like I mentioned in my story, I was born and raised as a Catholic, and what was instilled in me in the Catholic faith, and also from my mom and dad, was that you got to put God first. And so that's what stuck with me growing up.
You're a practicing Catholic?
We did go to church every Sunday. My mom and dad were strong in their faith, and it passed down to us, me and my siblings.
So you were introduced to the church through a friend of yours?
Yes, a friend of mine in high school, her name was Eileen. We were talking on the phone one day, just talking about our beliefs, talking about religion, and I mentioned to her that I was born and raised as Catholic. And she replied saying, hey, don't take this the wrong way, but did you know that there are certain teachings or doctrines that the Catholics uphold that actually contradict the Bible, And at that time, all I knew was, the Catholic faith. And I was like, what are you talking about, you know?
What happened after that?
Well, she brought up certain doctrines like, you know, the Bible talks about forbidding to marry or abstaining from certain foods, and you know, that sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Those are certain things that are done in the Catholic Church, and I never really thought about it because I didn't really look at these specific things in the Bible, and so I was like, oh man, like, are we worshiping the wrong way?
So she told you that what was being done, what you were observing, went against the teachings of the Bible. Is something like that?
Right. I was skeptical because I thought that, you know, we were worshiping God is what it came down to, and so she mentioned, well, she brought up the verses. I said I felt that I told her I needed to see it, you know.
Yeah.
So she got the verses for me. I ended up on my own looking up a Bible that I had in my house, looking up the verses, and it was right there. It was right there in black and white, and it was shocking to me because I was never exposed to this stuff before, you know. And I just remember thinking to myself, and I was young at that age, you know. My whole world was high school and my family and our traditions. And so I sat there after I read the verses, and I felt like my head's spinning.
You had believed something for so long, and that's how you were raised, and you thought it was true.
Right.
You're going in the right direction.
Right.
Then you found out that, hey, there's something wrong here.
Yeah.
So what was the next thing you did after that? How did?
Well,
You saw the verses. What did you decide to do?
Well, I was torn because it was right there in front of me in black and white. Part of me wanted to stay in that comfort zone. It was like, I heard this. What should I do? I couldn't just ignore it. Part of me wished that I hadn't have heard it, you know, because I didn't want to feel that shock, that stress. I didn't want to hear anymore. And so, but there was another part of me that said, oh, you heard it, you know, it's there in black and white. You have to find out in more detail why this is wrong. And so I was stuck right in the middle.
You know, that's what happened to you and what you did. Your decision is unusual because many people, I would even say most people, even when it comes to religion, they want comfort. They don't want to make any changes. They don't put any thought into it. Even if they will see things in black and white, they prefer to stay in their comfort zone. It's like there are some who would say it like, you know, I was born in this religion and I'm going to die here. My parents were born here. They were raised. My grandparents were all. And why do you think that people think that way? And how is it that you, as a young man, because, you know, when we say people think that way, people of all ages, but you were what, 17 at the time, and people at 17 are not necessarily thinking about religion. All right, they're thinking about the next fun thing to do, you know, what's going on in high school or whatever. But here you are making such a decision. That why do you think people refuse to look further into finding out what is true and comparing? And why did you decide to investigate further?
Well, it's true, and I hear that a lot, even from my own family, that, you know, it's tradition. It's what we grew up with. It's just how it is, you know. With me, but like I mentioned earlier, what stuck with me was putting God first, and that's what I learned in the Catholic faith. That's what my parents taught me. What it came down to was putting God first. And upon hearing like these truths in the Bible, I couldn't just ignore it. If I did that, I wouldn't have been putting God first. So the fact that I heard these truths, which were in black and white, I had to do what was right, and that's put God first. to keep going forward and finding more about what this church had to say about these doctrines.
When we come back, we'll find out the challenge that the Iglesia Ni Cristo posed to Brother Jason that only fueled his quest for truth. More with One-on-One after this. Welcome back. We're going one-on-one with Brother Jason Ladrillono from San Diego, California. Before we went to break, we found out how shocked he was to learn that many things that he was taught as a child in the Catholic Church were not based on God's teachings in the Bible. Now let's see how his story unfolds.
My initial impression of the Church of Christ was very positive. But I was really impressed with the minister. I was impressed how he was able to answer all of my questions with confidence, straight from the Bible. And I even recall him challenging me, saying, if I could find a doctrine or a certain teaching upheld within the Church of Christ that contradicted the Bible, then I would prove that I'm in the wrong religion and that you shouldn't even be here. And so, being the bookworm that I am, I took it as a challenge, and that pretty much started my search for the truth.
Although a challenge started his search, something else kept it going.
The thought alone of, what if the way I worshiped God wasn't right? The thought alone just turned my world upside down, and it just really saddened me. But it also was fuel to make me search for what was true, what was right.
So, Brother Jason, let's go back to the challenge that the minister posed. He challenged you concerning you finding a doctrine in the church that went against the teaching of the Bible. What did that do to you when he made that challenge to you?
With that challenge, it was hard to believe that there was a right way of serving God. At the time, when I was a Catholic, I felt that we were Catholic because that's what we were born in, that we just serve God that way, just as Christians and Protestants serve God another way, just as we have different cultures. It was just another way to serving the same God. And so it was just hard for me to swallow, is there really one true religion, And so that sparked my interest to go forward and going to these Bible studies, to find out what the church had to say, that there really was a true belief, true doctrines upheld in the church based on the Bible.
Now, the minister entertained questions from you, right? And questions from all the students. Did you find that peculiar or different or unique?
I did, and as you mentioned at the time, I was 17. I was in high school,
right?
And I asked him a bunch of questions, but they weren't as deep. So I went to the Bible studies, and then I was later baptized because I accepted these truths, the way the minister taught these doctrines straight from the Bible. It was clear, it was black and white, and it all made sense. But after I got baptized, I graduated from high school. And it was when I was in college, you know what they say about college, it's when you find yourself, you search for yourself.
Yeah.
Because in college you're exposed to stuff like, the Big Bang Theory, where did we evolve from apes, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so it's in college when I really delved into looking at all these different types of religions, such as Islam, early Christianity, the evolution of man, to kind of validate my own belief as a member of the Church of Christ. Because in college, as a young kid in college, you kind of need that. Because my world in high school was high school. My family, church, of course. But then when I went to college, the world opened up a little bit more, especially with all these new things like these different philosophies and teachings.
You're able to reason better in college.
Yeah, and you need that. You need to like understand why you believe in what you believe in. You know what I mean?
Right. Now, we're going to actually delve into that a little bit more later on. I wanted to, you mentioned something about when you learned that you were serving God in the wrong way that saddened you, that made you sad.
It did. And growing up, we attended, like I said, we attended church every single Sunday. And like I said, they instilled in us that reverent fear of God. I actually remember a story that I don't tell many people. When I was a kid, I used to love football. I used to have this little stuffed animal, this little bear that I used to pretend was a football, and I would actually kick field goals in my parents' bedroom. They actually had a goalpost. I mean, like, they had a headboard that was like a goalpost. On the side of the headboard was actually my mom's nightstand that had a statue of the Virgin Mary. There was one day when my kick veered left, and it struck the statue, and the statue's head broke off. And as a kid, like a 9-year-old kid, I was freaking out. Not because, you know, my mom would get mad at me, but because I thought
you respected
God.
that.
Yeah, because I thought God was going to get
yeah.
really mad at me. I thought he was going to punish me, and so I glued that statue back together. I prayed to that statue, which was Mary. I was like, please forgive me for doing this, and please let my mom not kill me when she gets home. And so growing up, and then later on finding out that, hey, what you believe in as a Catholic may not be right. Of course, a person growing up with that kind of belief in God, yeah, of course it'll shock you, and it shocked me.
What was your belief then, growing up, concerning who God is, and then how you should worship Him? At the time, was it like you believed that you can worship God using statues? Describe what it was like growing up in a Catholic home, and the belief that you had as a Catholic concerning who God, the true God, is.
Being a Catholic, it was just a different form of serving God, the same God. And just as I had a few friends that were Christians and Protestants, they served a different way. I didn't know why. It was just what they grew up with, their tradition. But ultimately, it was just serving God at the end, and that's what I thought it was. You know, it was. I thought it was God's way of, just as God made different people, He made different religions. But when I became a member of the church and I went through these Bible studies, that wasn't the case, because God's people, as shown like from the Old Testament and the New Testament, God has had always had a specific group of people that He actually chose and set aside, and they upheld specific doctrines. They were unified, and so that was one of the big things I learned going through Bible studies as a member of the church.
You know, I like how you put it earlier. You said the way people are thinking is like how God made different races and there are different cultures, then He also allows that there are different religions. I haven't had anyone say that before.
Yeah, but then the reality is that's how
people
mainstream Christianity thinks.
That's how they think, yeah.
Even like people who don't believe, you don't even have to be Christian.
Yeah, it's just...
But even people that aren't even Christian believe that too.
Yeah, there's many choices. Yeah, just have different choices.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then you found out that...
But I found out that, hey, as Christians, we have a Bible, and our beliefs as Christians is based on that Bible, that book. You know, why are there all these different ways of serving God when the authority of Christianity is right here in this book, you know?
Good. Right. More with One-on-One with Brother Jason Ladrillono when we return. Welcome back to One-on-One. We're here with Brother Jason Ladrillono. Now, before we went to break, we learned that Brother Jason was determined to double-check and triple-check everything that he had learned in the Iglesia Ni Cristo. Let's see just how far he went.
So Jason continued his search of faith through researching the Bible he immersed himself in history books and studying other religions like Buddhism, Islam, and other Christian professing groups.
One of the things I found out was that the Trinity, or the idea that Christ is God, isn't consistent with the Bible. As I learned more about the Bible, I was able to see that there was a consistent message on who the true God is, or what the nature of the true God is, as well as the true nature of Jesus Christ. And so I was so interested in this topic that in one of my college classes, I even wrote a paper about it.
Torn between this newfound knowledge and the strong family traditions he grew up with, Jason had to make a choice.
And at that point, I could have easily, turned my back. I could have went back to my comfort zone, went back to the things I knew, but my faith told me that, I can't do that. I can't like live a lie. I have to accept the truth for what it is. It's so convenient to believe that it doesn't matter what religion you're from, or just have faith in Jesus Christ and you'll be saved. But if you really, really study the Bible, it's pretty much the blueprint of how to serve God. And so that's when I went forward.
So, Brother Jason, you kind of went on a spiritual odyssey even after you joined the church, because you joined the church at age 17, when you were baptized. And then maybe a couple years passed, you're in college now, and that's when you were determined to check to see if what you believed in was legit.
Right.
How long did it take you to do your research?
Well, it was pretty much my entire time in college.
What happened during that? What did you find out during your studies?
In my classes, a lot of my classes involved, at least for my GEs, involved studying about the history of man, and the history of man, of course, involved religion. Religion was a big part of the history of man. It's just what shaped humanity, pretty much. And so, one of the things I learned about was, the beginning of Christianity, or at least the early times of Christianity. And in one of my classes, I found out about Constantine, about what his role was in Christianity at the time. He was Roman emperor around like 300 some AD.
Yeah, 4th century.
Yeah, and I found out that he had a big part in the Trinity doctrine, a big part, and
a lot of people don't know that.
A lot of people don't know that, and part of his what motivated him was, well, guess what? He was an emperor. A lot of it was for political purposes, which people don't know, because the empire was divided. He needed like a unified belief. You know what I mean? Just to appease everybody, so that people would stop bickering, and the Trinity actually it worked out. It was a big issue
at the time.
It was a big issue at the time, and symbolically, it worked out. It just did. And so I wrote a paper about it because I was able to identify with it.
Right.
I was a member of the Church of Christ, and we studied about that in our Bible study lessons. And so I wrote a paper about it. I was able to see from a historical perspective. I was used to seeing things from a biblical perspective through
and how it matched.
Yeah. And so I checked out all these different resources, and that whole experience was more of validation of my faith. It was just another way of saying, this is real. And so with all these different religions that I was exposed to, I kind of needed to find out what was wrong with this religion that makes, where I could kind of knock it off my list in terms of what the true beliefs are, what the true religions are. With Islam, I found out that there are different denominations in Islam.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of disagreement in Islam. And the Bible talks about unity. Like with a family, you guys can't survive if you guys aren't unified. And the Bible talks about that too with the church, that his people have to be unified. And that's natural in order for any organization to survive.
And survive, yes.
And I just felt that because Islam was kind of divided. Would God's people be that way too?
So you have the major religions, and then you have Christianity as one of the major religions. So you prove to yourself, based on your research, that Christianity is the way to go.
Right.
Now, within Christianity,
Yeah.
you have to differentiate between all of the thousands upon thousands of denominations. There are many thousands. And then you also have, of course, you have our friends who are Mormons, you have Jehovah's Witness, you have Seventh-day Adventists, and so forth and so on. And what now tells you that you're on the right path when you enter the church? Because the Church of Christ is not as known, this church is not as known as, say, the Mormons or the Jehovah's Witness.
Baptists. And,
right.
Yeah.
What was it that you studied in history, and then you saw in the Bible and the teachings we upheld that told you that you were in the right path?
Well, I kind of saw it like as a process of elimination back then, because I had to see things like logically. Like at that time, I needed to validate my faith, like why this is true. And so, focusing on Christianity, the majority of Christians, for instance, believe in the Trinity. If you could somehow prove that the Trinity is wrong, then I think it's safe to say that you could knock those religions or beliefs off of your list in terms of what's true. And so to me, the Church of Christ proved through the doctrinal lessons that the Trinity is a man-made teaching. The Trinity came about 300, 400 years after Christ died. The early Christians didn't uphold the Trinity. And so if you could prove that, which I feel that the Church of Christ did, you could eliminate the vast majority of all those Christian denominations.
You know, so many people hold on to that belief because it's like following the crowd. You have so many people who believe in that Trinity doctrine that's one of the most contentious teachings or beliefs within quote-unquote Christianity.
Right.
That if you will tell someone, hey, you don't believe that Jesus is God and you don't believe in the Trinity, they almost would label you as someone who is in a cult maybe, or you are not Christian.
I hear that all the time.
But from your experience and what you learned, what would you say about that?
Well,
people accuse you of something like that.
Well, number one, people need to really look at the Bible. Look in the Bible first. And there are so many instances that show and prove that there is no Trinity, that the only God is the Father. Jesus Christ is His Son. He was a man made by God. And the Holy Spirit is in God. And so that's kind of like step one. But what nailed it for me was my studying in college, that you could also see from the historical perspective how this doctrine came about. So you could see it in the Bible and then take a look at the history books too. All people need to do is just do some research. It's just people are just quick to dismiss that, hey, you don't believe in that Jesus is God. You don't believe in Christmas or whatever. You're not Christian. That's not true. But again, that's just the way we're raised. That's what society is conditioned to think. And
so many people, many of these people are actually using the Bible too. Why is it that you can clearly see it, and is it that the others are not really looking deep enough, or they are being influenced more by what they have learned from their past?
Well, to me personally, it was clear. It's in black and white. But to a lot of people, it's hard to swallow. Maybe it's the result of fear of believing something that might have been false, that might be false, something that they believed in their whole life.
Well, you mentioned earlier also that the Bible, you believe it's like the blueprint for man's life. What did you mean by that?
Well, I say this as a former Catholic, is that I don't want, and I'm not speaking for all Catholics, but I know a lot of Catholics that are really not that familiar with what's in the Bible. When you go to Mass, it's pretty much passages from the Bible that what's preached in Mass is parables. It's more focused on morality. But a lot of Catholics, I could say, maybe some Christians or Protestants aren't really familiar with like actual doctrine, and that's what changed for me when I was introduced to the Church of Christ. It just opened my eyes to what else was in that big book.
Yeah. More with Brother Jason when we come back, where he'll tell us how he broke free from his traditional ways to find true salvation. Stay with us. Welcome back to One on One as we wrap up our story on Brother Jason Ladrillono. The only spiritual beliefs he knew as a child have now been turned upside down. Let's find out how he had to choose between family traditions or a life in accordance with God's laws.
Move forward he did. Today, Jason is happily married and travels through life a little more confident, because finding the truth is like finding the map of life that God has laid out for him.
Now that I am a member of the church, I know exactly what God expects of me. And so that's why I live my life based on the teachings of God. It's like having that feeling of knowing a secret that you just want to tell everybody.
Well, you know, Brother Jason, it's not rare for people to switch religions. However, it's not also a common thing for people to do. Why switch? Why not just go along with what you believed your whole life?
Well, that's the hard part, breaking free from that comfort zone. When you're so ingrained in your tradition and what you grew up knowing, just breaking free from that, it hurts, you know. But if you want to follow God, at least the way I was thinking when I was young, back when I was 17, if you want to follow God, you have to take that step, and it's going to hurt, you know. I remember there's a verse in the Bible, I can't remember, it says, you know, you got to leave your father and mother and follow me.
Yeah, Christ.
And I remember that I had to do it. It's just it's what it said. I learned that I had to put God first, and that's what it took. If I didn't take that step forward, I'd be a hypocrite. Yeah. I wouldn't be putting God first. And I think that people that are just stuck in tradition, I hope they gathered the courage and the strength to go forward and find out for themselves what's the truth. And I feel that the truth, you can find it here in the Church of Christ.
Now, you've been a member for quite a few years now. About what, 12, 13 years?
I can't count.
Can't count, huh?
I can't count.
What has been some of the biggest things you've learned, and how has being a member of the Church of Christ kind of changed your thinking about life?
Well, being a member of the Church of Christ, it changed my state of mind in terms of the way I see the whole entire world. As a member of the Church of Christ, my family and we talk to God at least, I don't know, 5 times a day when you wake up, each meal, when you go to sleep, and in between when you have like special prayers. Every single thing that we do involves God. And that's the way it should be, at least that's the way the Bible describes it to be. Before that, you know, growing up as a Catholic, it was just something that we did every Sunday, you know. But as a member of the Church of Christ, when I learned about how God really wants us to serve, it's just a way of life. Everything everything you do, we do, at least as a family, we consider God, whether it's, you know, financial decisions, decisions regarding school and our kids. We pray because, you know, it's not up to us, it's up to God. We entrust everything to Him. And so, in that sense, that's what changed the way, at least the way I think, you know, that who are we? We're just small people, you know?
Yeah.
We can only do so much, but, you know, there's a higher being out there that could help us with anything.
And wants to help.
Yes. Yeah.
Now we didn't touch on this earlier, and then how it has affected, whether positively or negatively, your relationship with your family, especially your parents.
They never really approved or accepted me going to a different religion, of course, because, you know, they were diehard Catholics. They went to church every Sunday, and they still go to church every Sunday. But fast forward to today, I'm my own man, I have my own family, and my parents, they see the way we live life. They see the example that we live. They see our kids, and they see, and I know that they see that the church has had a positive impact on our lives, because they see the way we live. They see my little daughter praying at every single meal about to bless the food. There's got to be a point to where you need to question your own beliefs, especially with all of these things happening today, especially in this environment where we have like these natural disasters happening, people being engulfed in tsunamis, earthquakes, all this political unrest in the Middle East. I mean, this is not a coincidence. I mean, things are falling apart, and so I feel that people, especially, you know, my family, we need to like take it seriously and question our own beliefs, at least
As to why.
As to why.
Yeah.
You know,
look outside the box. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, you know, there may be, actually not maybe, there are probably quite a few people who are questioning already their religious beliefs. Maybe some are on the fence. They don't know. They're kind of lost. They don't know what to do, where to go, where to look. What could you say to them about the Church of Christ in their search for truth?
Well, first, I think that we all need to get our priorities straight. I think that's step one. We have to believe that God created all of us, that God created the world, and we have to put God first. And if you put God first, I think you'd be willing to go check out, you know, what's out there. Go search for the truth. But if you can't get there, I mean, you're pretty much going to be safe in your comfort zone. But if you stick to your comfort zone, like, where's that going to get you? Yeah. But I think first step is to get your priorities straight. And once you have that, I think the next step is search for the truth. And in your search for the truth, you definitely have to listen to what the Church of Christ has to say, because I feel that the truth is found here. All you have to do is just seek and learn.
Thanks, Brother Jason, for sharing your life and your faith with us, as well as our television audience.
Thanks, Brother Barry.
Now, as you listen to Brother Jason's story, perhaps it reminded you of someone you know, or maybe even your own story. With so many choices of churches out there, it's easy to get confused. But keep in mind that there are tons of religions and churches out there in the world today, but if you want truth, there is only one. The only church built by our Lord Jesus Christ, the Church of Christ, or Iglesia Ni Cristo. For more information about the Iglesia Ni Cristo or Church of Christ nearest you, write us at 1-on-1, 1655 Southgate Avenue, Daly City, California, 94015. Or email us at 1on1@inctvprod.net. Thanks for joining us. I am Brother Barry Thompson. See you again next time. God bless.